May 3rd, 1948, 9 p.m. Frank Costello walked into Small's paradise, alone. No bodyguards, no entourage, just Frank. That's how you showed respect. Bumpy Johnson was at his usual table, saw Frank, raised an eyebrow. Frank Costello, in Harlem, without an army. I must be important. You are, Frank said, sitting down. This must be serious. Very. Bumpy gestured to a waiter. 2 bourbons. They sat in silence until the drinks arrived. Then Frank spoke. Lucky's coming back. Bumpy had heard rumors. Lucky Luciano, the man who'd created the commission, organized the 5 families, built the modern Mafia, deported to Italy in 1946, but now trying to return. Coming back where? To America. To New York. To business. Bumpy sipped his bourbon.
The government won't allow it. He's working on it. Bribes, connections, political pressure. He thinks he can get the deportation reversed. And if he does, then he wants to rebuild, reorganize, consolidate power. Bumpy smiled. And he needs Harlem. Frank nodded. He needs Harlem, which means he needs you. What does he want? Partnership. Define partnership. 50-50 split. Of what? Everything. Numbers, policy, protection, bootlegging, all of it. You run operations. He provides protection, political connections, access to the commission. Bumpy leaned back. And what do I get? Money, safety, legitimacy. I already have those things.
Frank smiled. Do you? Bumpy's eyes narrowed. Explain. Right now you're independent, strong, respected, but isolated. The 5 families tolerate you because you're contained, but if you ever tried to expand beyond Harlem, they'd crush you. So partnership with Lucky changes that. You'd have commission backing, protection, the ability to operate anywhere. Bumpy studied Frank. You're offering me expansion. I'm offering you elevation, from king of Harlem to player in the national game. And what does Lucky get? Access. Harlem generates what, 2 million a year? More. 3 million? Close enough. That's significant revenue, and Lucky wants his cut. In exchange for what I already have? No. In exchange for what you could have.
Bumpy finished his bourbon. Tell Lucky I'll think about it. How long? I'll let you know. Frank stood up. Don't think too long. This offer has an expiration date. Why? Because if you say no, Lucky will find another way into Harlem, and that way might not be friendly. Is that a threat? That's reality. Bumpy stood, looked Frank in the eyes. Frank, I've been threatened by better men than Lucky Luciano, and I'm still here. They're not. Tell Lucky I'll give him my answer when I'm ready, not before. Frank nodded. Fair enough. But Bumpy? Yes? Lucky's not like other men. He doesn't take no lightly. Then he's going to learn.
May 4th, 1948, 10 a.m. Bumpy called a meeting with his inner circle. Mamie, Stephanie St. Clair, Junie Bird, Willie Jackson, his most trusted advisors. He laid out Costello's offer. 50-50 partnership with Lucky Luciano, access to the commission, national reach, but at what cost? Stephanie spoke first. You'd be giving up independence, half your revenue, half your power. For what? Protection you already have. Exactly, Junie agreed. We don't need them. Mamie was quiet, then spoke. But what if we do? Everyone looked at her. What do you mean? Mamie continued. Right now we're strong in Harlem, but that's it. We can't expand, can't grow. We're trapped in 10 square blocks. Is that enough? Yes, Bumpy said, because it's ours. But for how long? Mamie pressed. You're 44 years old. How much longer can you fight? 10 years? 20? And then what? What happens to Harlem when you're gone? Bumpy was quiet. She had a point. If the offer is real, Mamie continued, it could secure Harlem's future. Not just yours, the whole community's. By partnering with the mob? By partnering with power. There's a difference. Stephanie shook her head. This is a mistake. Luciano doesn't do partnerships. He does takeovers. First it's 50-50, then it's 60-40, then 70-30. then you're working for him. She's right, Willie said. This is how they operate. Slow conquest. Bumpy listened, then spoke. So what do I do? Test him, Stephanie said. How? Make demands.
See if he's willing to negotiate, or if this is take it or leave it. And if it's take it or leave it, then we know it's not a real partnership. It's a trap.
May 15th, 1948. 2 weeks later. Bumpy sent word to Costello. He wanted a face-to-face meeting with Lucky Luciano on neutral ground. Atlantic City was chosen. June 15th, 1948. The meeting, a hotel suite overlooking the ocean. Present, Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, Vito Genovese, Joe Bonanno, the 5 most powerful mobsters in America, and Bumpy Johnson, with Junie Bird. That's it. 2 men facing 5. Lucky Luciano looked older than his 51 years. Prison and deportation had aged him, but his eyes were still sharp, calculating, dangerous. Mr. Johnson, Lucky said, thank you for coming. Mr. Luciano, please, call me Lucky. Bumpy didn't. They sat. Lucky began. Frank told you about my offer. He did. What do you think?
I think it's interesting, but incomplete. How so? You're offering me 50% of my own operation in exchange for your protection and connections. That's not a partnership. That's a tax. Lucky smiled. Fair point. So what would make it a partnership? 60-40. In my favor. Lucky's smile disappeared. That's not reasonable. It's my operation, my people, my territory. You want access? You pay for it. Meyer Lansky leaned forward. Mr. Johnson, you're negotiating from a position of weakness. Am I? Yes, we can take Harlem whenever we want. Then why haven't you? Because it would be expensive, bloody, and ultimately not worth it. But if you force our hand, we will. Bumpy looked at each of them.
Lucky, Frank, Meyer, Vito, Joe, 5 of the most powerful men in organized crime, threatening him. He smiled. Gentlemen, let me explain something. Harlem is not like your territories. It's not the Bronx, not Brooklyn, not Manhattan. It's a community, a culture, a people. And those people are loyal to me, not because I'm the strongest, because I protect them.
If you come into Harlem with force, you won't be fighting me. You'll be fighting 10,000 people. Every shopkeeper, every preacher, every mother, every kid. They'll resist, sabotage, rebel, and you'll spend more money keeping Harlem than you'd make from it. Vito Genovese scoffed. You're bluffing. Am I? Test me. Lucky raised a hand. Enough. He looked at Bumpy. You make a compelling argument. Thank you, but 60-40 is too much. Then we don't have a deal. Lucky studied Bumpy. You're willing to walk away from this? Yes. Why? Because I'd rather be king of Harlem than a prince in your empire. Lucky smiled. I respect that. Good, but I can't accept 60-40. What can you accept? 50-50, with one condition. What condition?
Harlem remains autonomous. I run it my way. No interference, no oversight. You get your 50%, but you don't touch operations. Lucky looked at his partners. Meyer nodded. Frank nodded. Joe nodded. Vito shook his head, but he was outvoted. Lucky extended his hand. Deal. Bumpy didn't shake it. One more thing. What? If you ever try to take more than 50%, or interfere with how I run Harlem, the deal ends and we go to war. You'd go to war with the commission? Yes. Lucky studied Bumpy's face, saw no fear, no bluff, just certainty. This man would actually fight, and probably make it very expensive. Lucky smiled. You've got balls, Johnson. I'll give you that. So do we have a deal? Lucky extended his hand again.
This time, Bumpy shook it. Deal.
June 16th, 1948. The next day, Bumpy returned to Harlem, called another meeting with his inner circle, told them about the deal, 50-50 partnership. Harlem remains autonomous, no interference. Stephanie was skeptical. You trust them? No. Then why agree? Because refusing would have meant war, and war would have destroyed Harlem. This way we keep control, pay a tax, but stay independent. Mamie agreed. It's pragmatic. Willie didn't. They're going to try to take more, eventually. Probably. So what's the plan? We prepare for war while hoping for peace. July 4th, 1948, Independence Day. Bumpy threw a party at Small's Paradise, invited everyone, the whole community. And as a gesture, he invited Frank Costello, representing Lucky. Frank came
With a gift, a Rolex watch, from Lucky, with an inscription, to Bumpy Johnson, a man who knows his worth. Lucky Luciano. Bumpy put it on, showed Frank. Tell Lucky thank you. I will. And Frank? Yes? Tell him I meant what I said, about war. If he crosses me, we fight. I'll tell him. Good. Frank smiled. You know, Bumpy, Lucky respects you. Why? Because you didn't bow. Most men, when faced with the commission, they fold, beg, give up everything. You negotiated, stood your ground, threatened war. That's rare. I'm not most men. No, you're not. That's why Lucky wants this partnership to work. Does it? Work? So far. July, December 1948. 6 months of partnership. The arrangement held. Bumpy ran Harlem, kept 50%.
50% to Lucky's people. No interference, no problems. Revenue actually increased because Bumpy had commission protection, could operate more openly, expand slightly into neighboring areas. By the end of 1948, Harlem was generating $4 million a year. Bumpy kept $2 million. Lucky's organization got $2 million. Everyone won. January 1949. Vito Genovese made a move, tried to muscle into Harlem without permission, sent his men to shake down businesses, collect unauthorized protection money. Bumpy called Frank Costello. We have a problem. What? Genovese is violating our agreement. He's operating in Harlem without consent. Frank sighed. I'll handle it. No, I'll handle it. But I wanted you to know, so Lucky knows it wasn't me who started this. Understood. Be careful. Genovese is dangerous. So am I. January 15th, 1949. Bumpy's men confronted Genovese's crew on 135th Street. 10 of Bumpy's men, 8 of Genovese's. You're not authorized to be here, Junie said. We don't need authorization. Yes, you do. We have a deal with Lucky. You're violating it. Genovese doesn't answer to Lucky. Then Genovese is going to have a problem. With who? With me. Bumpy stepped out of the shadows. Behind him, 30 more men, armed, ready. Genovese's men were outnumbered 4-1. Tell Vito, Bumpy said, that Harlem is off limits. If he wants to discuss changing the arrangement, he can take it up with Lucky, but if he sends men here again without permission, they won't go home. Genovese's men left, reported back. Vito was furious, but Frank Costello intervened, called a commission meeting, told Vito to back off. You're violating Lucky's deal, Frank said. Bumpy Johnson has autonomy in Harlem. That was the agreement. I don't care about the agreement. Then you're going to war. With Bumpy? With Lucky and the rest of the commission. We voted on this. You're outvoted. Vito backed down, humiliated, but alive. February 1949. Lucky Luciano called Bumpy. From Italy. First time they'd spoken directly. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Luciano, I heard about the situation with Genovese. Yes, you handled it well. Thank you. I want you to know, our deal stands. Harlem is yours, as long as you honor the 50-50 split. I will. Good. Because you've proven something important. What's that? That a black man can stand up to the Italian Mafia and win. That's significant. Not just for you, for everyone. Bumpy was quiet, then spoke. Mr. Luciano, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really offer this partnership? Lucky laughed. Honestly. Yes,
because taking Harlem by force would have been stupid, expensive, bloody, and probably impossible. You're too entrenched, too respected. So partnership made sense. But more than that, yes, I respect strength, and you're strong. Not just physically, mentally. You know your worth. You don't bow. That's rare, especially for a man in your position. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being strong, because the moment you weaken, someone will try to take what's yours. I know. Good. Then we understand each other.
March 1949, 9 months into the partnership. The arrangement was working, but tensions remained. Vito Genovese was still angry, still looking for opportunities. And in March, he found one. A numbers runner in Harlem, named Marcus Webb, started skimming, taking money from both Bumpy's cut and Lucky's cut. When caught, Marcus made a deal with Genovese. I'll testify that Bumpy's been cheating Lucky, shorting his payments, keeping more than 50%. Genovese brought this to the commission, called an emergency meeting, accused Bumpy of violating the partnership. Frank Costello called Bumpy. We have a problem. What now? Genovese is accusing you of cheating Lucky. Based on what? A witness. Marcus Webb, your numbers runner.
Bumpy's blood went cold. Marcus, one of his most trusted operators, had been stealing, and now was lying to save himself. What does Lucky say? He wants to hear your side before making a decision. When? Tomorrow. Atlantic City. Same hotel. Bumpy hung up. Called Junie. Find Marcus Webb, now. By midnight they had him, tied to a chair in a warehouse. Marcus was crying. Bumpy, I'm sorry. I had to. They were going to kill me. So you lied. Said I was cheating Lucky. Yes. Why? Because Genovese said if I testified against you, he'd protect me. And you believed him. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You made the wrong one. Bumpy pulled out his ledgers. Every transaction. Every payment. Every split. For 9 months. All documented.
Here's proof I never shorted Lucky. Every payment, exactly 50%, to the dollar. Marcus looked at the books, realized his lie was about to be exposed. What happens now? Now you come with me to Atlantic City, and you tell the truth.
March 20th, 1949. Atlantic City. Commission meeting. Same room as before. Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, Meyer Lansky, Vito Genovese, Joe Bonanno, and Bumpy Johnson, with Marcus Webb in handcuffs. Lucky spoke first. Mr. Johnson, you've been accused of cheating, of keeping more than 50%. What do you say? I say it's a lie. Vito leaned forward. We have a witness who says otherwise. Your witness is a thief and a liar. Prove it. Bumpy placed the ledgers on the table. Here's every transaction for the past 9 months. Every payment to your organization. Exactly 50%, to the dollar. Meyer Lansky examined the books, spent 20 minutes going through them, then looked up. These are accurate. Every payment.
Exactly 50%. No discrepancies. Vito turned to Marcus. You said he was cheating. Marcus was sweating. I was wrong. Wrong or lying? Lying. Marcus broke down. Mr. Genovese told me to say Bumpy was cheating. Said if I testified, he'd protect me. But it wasn't true. I was the one stealing, not Bumpy. The room went silent. Lucky Luciano looked at Vito. You fabricated evidence? I was trying to protect the organization. By lying to the commission? Vito had no answer. Lucky stood up. Vito, you're out of order. This meeting is adjourned. He turned to Bumpy. Mr. Johnson, my apologies for this waste of time, for questioning your integrity, and for Vito's behavior. Bumpy nodded. Accepted. What about Marcus? What about him?
He stole from both of us and lied. He's yours to handle, however you see fit. Bumpy looked at Marcus.
then at Lucky. I'll handle it.
March 21st, 1949. Back in Harlem. Bumpy stood in front of Marcus, in the same warehouse. Marcus was begging for his life. "Please, Bumpy, I made a mistake." "Yes, you did. I'll pay back every dollar." "You can't. You stole from the mob. They don't forgive debt." "So what happens to me?" Bumpy thought for a moment, then made a decision. "You're banished. From Harlem. Permanently. Leave New York. Never come back. If I ever see you again, you're dead." Marcus looked up. "You're letting me live? I'm giving you a chance, which is more than you deserve." "But why?" "Because killing you makes me like them, and I'm not like them. I run Harlem my way, with my rules, and my rules say that mistakes can be forgiven. Once. This is your once."
Marcus was escorted out of Harlem, never seen again. When Vito Genovese heard about it, he was confused. "You let him live?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I could, and because mercy is more powerful than murder." Vito learned something that day. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just strong, he was wise. April 1949, 1 year into the partnership. Lucky Luciano sent another message, from Italy. "Mr. Johnson, our partnership has exceeded expectations. Revenue is up, operations are smooth, and you've proven yourself trustworthy. More than that, you've proven yourself honorable. That's rare in our business. I want to propose something, an extension of our arrangement. I'm listening. I want to give you more territory, not just Harlem, but parts of the Bronx, Queens,
Brooklyn. You'd still operate independently, still keep 50%, but with expanded reach." Bumpy read the letter to Mamie. "What do you think?" "I think Lucky's testing you." "How so?" "He's offering expansion, seeing if you're satisfied with what you have, or if you want more." "And what should I say?" "What do you want?" Bumpy thought. Harlem is enough. Then tell him that.
May 1949. Bumpy's response to Lucky. "Mr. Luciano, I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. Harlem is my home, my community, my responsibility. Expanding beyond it would dilute my focus, weaken my effectiveness. I'd rather be the undisputed king of Harlem than a disputed prince of multiple territories. I hope you understand, and I hope this doesn't offend you." When Lucky received the letter, he smiled, showed it to Meyer Lansky. "Read this." Meyer read it, laughed. He turned down expansion. Yes. Why? Because he knows who he is and what he wants. That's wisdom. Meyer nodded. Most men in his position would have jumped at the chance, would have overextended, weakened themselves. But Bumpy knows his limits and stays within them.
That's discipline. Lucky folded the letter, put it in his desk drawer. Mr. Johnson just earned more respect by saying no. June 1949, the partnership's 1-year anniversary. Lucky sent a gift, a painting of Harlem, 125th Street, painted by a famous Italian artist, with a note, to Bumpy Johnson, who knows that the greatest power is knowing when to say no. Thank you for teaching me that lesson, Lucky. Bumpy hung the painting in his office, above his desk, where he could see it every day. A reminder that he'd stood up to the most powerful mobster in America and won, not through violence, through principle. July 1949, 1955. 6 years of partnership. The arrangement held. Bumpy ran Harlem, independently, kept 50%.
Because you proved something I didn't think was possible. What's that? That power doesn't have to be absolute. That you can share, and both sides win. That's rare in our world. Everyone wants everything. But you didn't. You knew what you wanted, and you took only that, nothing more. That's wisdom, and it made me respect you, more than any made man I've ever worked with. Bumpy was quiet, then spoke. Mr. Luciano, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really let me keep autonomy when you could have just taken Harlem by force? Lucky was quiet, then spoke honestly.
Because I'm tired. Tired? Of what? Of fighting, of violence, of wars that accomplish nothing. I spent my whole life building the Commission, organizing crime, making it rational, efficient. But it's still bloody, still brutal. When I met you, I saw something different. A man who'd built power through respect, not just fear, through community, not just control. I wanted to see if that could work, in partnership, if we could do business without bloodshed. And you proved it could. So I'm grateful. For what? For showing me there's another way. September 1955. Bumpy attended a commission meeting as a guest. First time a non-Italian had ever been invited. Lucky introduced him. Gentlemen, this is Bumpy Johnson. You all know him. He runs Harlem independently, but in partnership with us. And I want to tell you something. This man has taught me more about power than anyone in this room. He's taught me that strength isn't about how much you take.
It's about how much you keep. That respect isn't about fear, it's about integrity. And that the best partnerships are built on mutual interest, not domination. I recommend we extend his model to other territories, other partnerships. The room was silent. Then Carlo Gambino spoke. With all respect, Lucky, Bumpy Johnson is unique. You can't replicate what he's built. Why not? Because it requires something most men don't have. What? The ability to say no, even when saying yes is easier, even when saying yes is profitable. Bumpy says no because he knows who he is and what he wants. That's not teachable. The commission nodded. Agreed. Bumpy Johnson was one of a kind.
January 1957. Lucky Luciano died, heart attack, in Italy, age 64. Bumpy attended the funeral, in Naples, one of only 3 non-Italians invited. At the funeral, Frank Costello spoke. Lucky Luciano built the commission, organized crime, made us powerful. But his greatest achievement wasn't the commission. It was the partnership with Bumpy Johnson. Because that partnership proved that organized crime doesn't have to be about domination. It can be about cooperation, about mutual respect, about shared success. Bumpy proved that to Lucky, and Lucky never forgot it. After the funeral, Meyer Lansky approached Bumpy. What happens now to the partnership? That depends on you. On me? You're Lucky's successor. Technically, Frank is. But functionally, I manage the finances. So what do you want? I want the partnership to continue. Same terms. 50-50. Harlem autonomy. No interference. Meyer extended his hand. Deal. They shook. The partnership continued. February 1957, 1968. 11 more years. The arrangement held, even after Lucky's death. Bumpy ran Harlem. The commission got their 50%. No problems, no wars, just business. By 1968, Harlem was generating $8 million a year. Bumpy kept $4 million, the commission got $4 million. The most successful organized crime partnership in history. July 7, 1968, Bumpy Johnson died, heart attack, age 63. At his funeral, Frank Costello spoke. Bumpy Johnson was many things: criminal, protector, leader, friend. But most importantly, he was a man who knew his worth. When Lucky Luciano offered him partnership, most men would have bowed, accepted any terms, been grateful. But Bumpy negotiated, demanded respect, threatened war if he didn't get it, and Lucky respected him for it. That partnership lasted 20 years, made both sides wealthy, and proved something important: that different worlds can coexist, that power doesn't have to be absolute, that respect can be mutual. Bumpy Johnson taught us that, and we're all better for it. In the audience, Meyer Lansky stood, applauded. The rest of the commission followed, a standing ovation. For a man who'd never bowed, never compromised, never surrendered his independence, even when facing the most powerful organization in America. 1969, 1 year after Bumpy's death, the partnership dissolved. Not because of conflict, but because Bumpy was irreplaceable. Harlem fractured, multiple operators,
None with Bumpy's respect, none with his integrity, none with his ability to say no. The commission tried to take control, sent men in, but the community resisted, remembered Bumpy, remembered independence, refused to bow. By 1975, the commission gave up. Harlem remained independent, because Bumpy had taught them
that some things can't be bought, can't be controlled, can only be respected. 1980, Meyer Lansky, on his deathbed, gave an interview. Asked about his greatest regrets, one stands out, he said. What? That we didn't learn from Bumpy Johnson. Learn what? That partnership works better than domination, that respect works better than fear, that knowing your worth works better than accepting less. Bumpy knew all that, and he never compromised. I wish we'd all learned that lesson. The world would be different. If this story of independence, negotiation, and mutual respect moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe that knowing your worth is more valuable than any amount of money. Share this with someone who needs to hear about the man who faced down the Mafia and made them respect his terms. What would you have done in Bumpy's position? Let me know in the comments. And remember, the greatest power isn't taking everything. It's knowing exactly what you want and refusing to settle for less. Bumpy Johnson knew that, and it made him a legend.